Okay, give people a chance to join in and let's get going on this session, change orders. Okay, so those that are new, we have weekly training classes covering different topics. Those can be found at acumaticaengineering.com/acumatica-training. These are for central nervous system clients only, so this is not something you'll find on our website as a link. So this is something that our clients will pass on to their staff. And if you're on here, uh, that is what has happened, and you were afforded um, um, this link. So welcome. Every class will be recorded and available to you on demand. Generally, this will go up by the end of this week, sometime tomorrow, it should be up on the site. And so you can pull up our previous classes, acumaticaengineering.com/maintenance classes. So this is, great for those that have joined in and want to go through it at their own pace and or miss something and want to re-review that piece, try it out on their own system, etc. Ideally, and some people do this and go, well, I'm not going to show up to class. I'm just going to catch it on demand when I get a chance. The benefit of you guys being here with me today is that you can ask questions. And so this is interactive. We do answer questions, and questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. On your meeting box, you have a section called um, submit questions. Use that question box for that, and we'll answer as many as we have time for. Um, if we have so many questions that we can't answer them all, we'd like to be able to share those answers with all of you. And as such, that we will put those answers onto the blog, and we will then also go to the people that asked the question and answer those questions for them there. So our blog, acumaticaengineering.com/blog. Some nice tips and tricks and a bunch of different things on there that you might find useful. Okay, so that's the um, administrative preamble to the class. So let's talk about what we are talking about today. So today is change orders. So we got to talk about change order, the overview of change orders, how change order works. Got to talk about commitments and how those are pulled into Acumatica on the project side. We're going to do a demo, so look at it in Acumatica, and then talk about some related setup pieces that we would need in order for this to work. So starting off at a high level on the change order overview. So change orders are important to reflect budget adjustments that impact billability and profitability for a particular project. The change order workflow offers a proper audit trail and authorizations um, that allow users, project managers, management to be able to see all the changes that have happened and how that has impacted the project. By having change orders, it means that if I want to make a change to a the revenue budget, cost budget, uh, I need to go through a process that someone else needs to go and approve. And as such, I'm not just adjusting the numbers to make the project look good. That is key. And some of you would go, yeah, well, that's obvious. But in a lot of deployments that we have done, uh, having a budget has been either optional or um, it's been allowed to make changes to the budget by the project manager. So you really don't have a good look as to how the the project is doing. So that is not ideal, and so that's why we want to go through this process. So what does that change order workflow look like? So first, when we create the change order, um, we want to lock the project budget and commitments. So we create the project um, from a quote, if it's coming through the CRM process, or if you don't have that, then you're just creating the project uh, as a starting point. We want to have those budgets put in and then have those budgets locked. So having those budgets locked means that we are able to then track these change orders to capture changes in revenue, changes in costs, adjustments, new work that needs to be done, anything like that that's involving the project. We want to do it through a change order, and so that allows that visibility to these changes. So once we have it locked, then we generate change orders, we submit the change orders for approval, and it's not only the external, not only sending it to the client, but it is also internal. So having a discipline lead or a business unit lead review something that the project manager may have discussed with them, but now we are capturing that digitally in the system to show that, hey, this change has been requested, or we need to make this adjustment. The teams realize that we don't have enough resources and we're going to have some senior people go in and do some work. So we need to adjust that budget, the cost budget to reflect that. And that way, again, now it's not that the project manager is on the hook and it's just adjusting things. We want them to be able to have a true visibility as to what's gone on. And then once we have all those things done, release the change order. So change order feature is something that we turn on, so enable and disable um, in the Acumatica system configuration. So if you don't have change orders turned on, that's um, something that needs to be turned on. We need to turn that on for you. Once enabled, change order workflow can be turned on and off for each project. So within the project itself, we can say, hey, we want change orders available, or we can say no. For this project, we don't want it to be turned on. So change order is in effect when. So setup. So the project budget is locked and the change order workflow is active. So a couple of key things that we want in place. So budget is locked, talked about that, and this is the change order workflow that we discussed, having that turned on for the project. So locking the budget, so that's something that we want to have um, key people. So whether it's a project admin role or a project accountant role, someone other than the project manager role, we want to give that access to be able to lock the budget. So when the project is created, it goes through a process and the budget is locked. And certainly having the locking feature, and more importantly having the unlocking feature, having that locked down so that only certain people um, can unlock. And so unlocking the budget would be some historical information is incorrect and we need to make that adjustment, or there's something that was done in error, and a an Acumatica admin would be the only ones that could go in and make an adjustment to it. So that is, key thing that we'd want to have in place. Okay, so now that we've talked about um, pieces of, how change orders get created, locking budgets, and workflows, and things like that. So how does the change order work? So let's talk about that. So change orders allow you to adjust both revenue and cost budgets of a project if you choose. So that is something that you make a choice on what you can do on change orders, and that's part of the setup. Change order adjustments are for net change. So we're doing this for the net change quantity and amount. So we use a positive number to increase and a negative number to decrease. So if we're dropping down a quantity or dropping down a value, dollar value um, of what we initially budgeted, and there's a change, we're not going to be doing a section of the work or whatever um, has been agreed upon, then we want to do a minus. If we want to add a piece to it, then we want to be able to add. And so doing a positive number. When editing quantity and amount of existing budget lines, look for the select budget lines budget. And we'll see that when we do a demo. When adding a new item, a new cost item, then we want to use the plus to add a new line so that that doesn't get put in with the rest of um, the tasks that we have in place. So an existing item, we leave that alone. We add a new item onto that. So you will notice when we show this, the original budget quantity will remain. And so we're holding that information again for visibility. Hey, this is what we start off with. This is what was signed off from the client. Um, and, so we want to have this shown, etc. Because then we can see what the revised budget quantity amount is and see the change that took place. So once we make those changes, we take the change order off hold and submit those for approval. Once approved, then we would go and release, and off we go. Okay, so next we want to talk about a piece called commitments, and not every one of you um, have this. So that's why I want to talk about commitments, and some of you may go, "Ooh, maybe I want this um, this piece." So uh, if we're doing purchase orders, and it's not just for inventory items or for non-inventory items, so people do use this and say, "Okay, hey, I want to use purchase orders to track um, my subcontractors," for example. That's what most people do this for, is look at subcontractor, open up a PO for that, and be able to track that and track that to the project. So that's the beautiful part of this, is that you can apply that to your project, and then it shows up on the project showing you, hey, I've got these commitments that I've made for the projects against for these POs. Now, in the same manner that we lock our budgets, we also lock our commitments. And so what that allows us to do is um, if there's a change, or we need to make a change to a purchase order, it needs to be unlocked. So we're not just randomly giving a subcontractor more work, or whatever, the process that we have internally, that we um, ensure that that is locked and goes through a process to allow that to be changed. Using the CO commitment tab, you can select the commitments and apply a plus and minus to the order quantity and make that adjustment and go through the approval process that we talked about. For a change order, we can do that for our commitments as well. And so that gives us an additional approval, visibility, um, all that kind of thing that we want to have in place. So before we talk about the dashboard and the dashboard KPIs and things like that, let's now have a look at this in Acumatica, so that we can see what this looks like. Sorry, I just lost it. Bear with me here. Let me find that back. Where did you go? Acumatica, come back. Great. There we go. Okay, so now that I have Acumatica. So let's walk through some of the things that we talked about and see that in Acumatica, in the system, and be able to follow those pieces here. Okay, so here's my change orders. So under projects, project change orders, but I'm going to take a step back and let's look at the projects, and give us a view of that before we hop into the actual change order itself. So, go look at a project that I normally use. Here. Let that load up. Oops, don't want that there. Oops. Great. So now I've my project's loading up. And let's look at my, yeah, I think I have to look at this one here. So we've got my hotel project here. So a few things I want to touch on. So change order workflow is turned on. By doing that, that means my change order tab is showing up and allows me to do change orders. Over here, I have, so this particular thing, my budget is unlocked. So I can lock the project here, lock the commitments here. And so this is part of the process of creating this project. These are open because this is my demo data set, but locking the budget, locking the commitments. So this is something that needs to happen in creating the project process. So I'm going to look at my revenue budget. So as you can see, I have an original um, budget amount in here, and then a revised budget amount. So the this is the original one when we started off the project, um, and this is revised with any potential change orders. So notice that I have a column here that says potential change order in here, which means that under change orders, I probably have some change orders that are ready to go. And so I do. I have 4 change orders that are sitting on hold here um, that I need to deal with. Okay, move this. I can do this better. Okay, so I've got 4 change orders. They are on hold. So that means they haven't been released. So they will not be reflected on the uh, on the total budgets. So if I go back into my revenue budget, it's not reflected in my revised budget because it's sitting in a potential section. On my cost side, so as I mentioned before, that you can go in and do a change order just on the budget. So hey, we're changing the rate that we're charging the customer. Um, or we're doing some more work um, and we're taking care of that on the revenue side, but we also have costs. So when we do a quote, if we're doing that in Acumatica, you guys know that we have cost side, we have a revenue side to give us the margin because we want to, you know, figure out what our margins are. So whenever we do a change order, ideally we want to do it on both sides. So if we're doing a revenue change, that we make the adjustment on the cost budget. But you may have a one-sided side where we're adding cost to the cost budget side, but the revenue is not changing. So typically, this would be for a fixed fee piece, and so that would be something that we would normally run into. Talked about commitments, and so commitments are um, purchase orders that we're creating um, for additional work to be done through subcontractor, and you want to be able to trace that through. And so this allows us to be able to see this through here and see what our orders are, and drill down into them um, for those orders, or create purchase orders directly from the project into it. So let's look at a change order. So I've got a change order here for this project. So I'm going to drill into it. And here it is. So in my demo box here, I've also have change requests turned on. So someone can make a request for a change order to the PM, and the PM would then take that and create a change order for that work. So that is specific um, to that additional piece should we need that. So we're not going to go into request here, but that is something that can be done. So here's my revenue budget. So on my revenue budget, I have a task. It's task number 9 on the project. So this is the revenue. So here's my quantity. So I'm increasing my quantity by 5,400. It's a square foot. And here's my total dollars that I'm going to be increasing it. So my new revised budget um, is being adjusted. So here's my original. Here's my $5,400 that's um, coming through. Sorry, 44,000 is coming through the amount. This is the quantity that I'm adjusting. Big numbers here, so it gets confusing, but I've added a quantity here. So here's my original, what I started off with, and this is what my revised is going to be. Want to minimize this, come back, and we'll come back to, let's close this off. Let's look at task. So I have my task here. So this is task number 9 on my revenue budget. Let's go find task number 9. And here's task number 9. For that line for finishes, here's my my amount. Notice the revised amount is the same, and that's because we haven't posted the change order. So we have a bunch of change orders that make up. So the one that we looked at was 44,000. This was almost $1 million of different things that have been done. So back to this one here. There are instances that if you do not have a unit of measure listed on the revenue budget or the cost budget. So in this case, I do have a unit of measure. If I don't have a unit of measure, then the quantity will not come across. So the revised quantity when I release my change order will not show. So one key thing that we got to remember is when we're applying change order to a task, revenue budget, cost budget, that uh, that we have an existing one that has a unit of measure on it. So this is my revenue side. On my cost side, again, I've got a subcontractor that's going to be doing the work and making the adjustment. Here's the dollar value that we're expecting as a cost, and then the remainder, of course, becomes uh, my margin on this job. So I've got 2 tabs, revenue and cost. I did mention a while back that, hey, I can go in and adjust those things based on my setup. And so change order classes are is where we go in there and um, so I've got one test one here. So notice here, based on the class, I can select whether I can do revenue budget, cost budget, commitments, one or the other, that kind of thing. So I go back to this change order here. This has all three of them that allowing it to go through. And I can also have attributes that I need to have on the change order before I do this. So let's look at another one here. So revenue budget. In this case, I don't have a quantity that I'm bringing across, just a dollar value. And here's my change in amounts. Um, so we've got 150,000 on the cost side out of 105,000, and here's my gross margin. So this would end up having to go um, for approval. Now notice this one says external. So we're using the external class. And so when we're using something like that, that means, hey, we're sending, this is something that um, is a change that the customer has requested. And so notice all of these are external. So this is a good way of differentiating something that we're doing internally, so adjusting our costs for the projects versus something that's being flagged by the client. So this one here is using internal. So let's open that one up. So refrigerator was dropped. So that means we need to do a change order. So we are having to purchase a new one and put that in there. We don't have warranties or whatever it needs to be. And so therefore we're doing an internal. There's nothing on the on internal ones where there's no revenue because it's internal, but there's um, a uh, a cost change as well as commitment change. So in here, we need to go and put in a PO to request that new refrigerator. We're putting that through as a new line. So we want that as a separate line item on our cost budget so that we're still putting it against a task that exists, so task number 3, but we're putting a new line so that we can track this particular thing. This is sitting on this purchase order number. And again, once approved, this is going to flow through. So notice gross amount, gross margin percentage is 0 because again, we don't have any revenue on this. Let's open up this one. So this has a CEO class. So if I open a change order, so again, it has all 3 commitments. And this one also has a 2-tier change management. So it has to go through multiple tiers to make that as part of the process. So that's why we have additional piece. Again, commitments are on here. We have a revenue budget. We've got a cost budget. Um, again, if we needed some additional information to show up, we set that up in the attributes associated with the class. Those will show up here. We can make it mandatory and not have those that information flow through. And then our approvals, once this is approved, will show up on here, allowing us to see who's approved that work. So let's make this come across. I don't lose this. So I need to lost my spot. So I need to stop sharing for a second here. Show the screen again. There we go. Okay, so related things that we would have as part of a change order. Approval map. So we would, in the approval process, we would have an approval map set up. So that would allow us to flow through the approval process, whether it's one step, two step, who gets it? Is it based on um, the project? Is it always going to a certain person? Does finance need to be involved? So do we need additional steps where someone else needs to look at it? Is there a value? So if the change order is over a certain limit, does it have to go to someone else? So setting up the approval map is key um, to ensure that that workflow works properly. Next is, do we want to have this tracked on a dashboard? So is there a dashboard KPI that we need um, um, to populate and to pull through? Uh, and if so, then we need to ensure that we pull that through so that someone can look at it on their dashboard to say, hey, my project team has um, a change order, where is it sitting at, and what additional steps do I need to take to make this work? So if that's something that we need, then uh, we need to have that in place. So change orders, quick one today. Normally I'm right up against it. But this one's a fairly quick one. So what did we talk about? Change order overview. So we went through what a change order would be um, as a overall piece, uh, how change order works, uh, and go through those processes of boxes, checking off. Talked about commitments and making changes to commitments from the change order. How to look in the system on um, how different versions of the change orders can be added in there, and talked about the related setup of the KPI as well as um, the approval map. So let's see if we've got any questions. Doesn't look like we have any questions at this moment. So I think either I put you guys to sleep or this perfectly clear. And probably not, neither of those two. So please do reach out if you have any questions on it, if you don't get that information through. So again, as a reminder, weekly training classes covering different topics. Next week, have generic inquiries and dashboards for you guys. Next Thursday, so we actually I don't do much talking on a PowerPoint. It is we take a scenario or an ask and create a GI and then create a dashboard widget. So it's a really neat one to go through. And hopefully you guys join me and walk through what I do on screen for yourselves as well. And then the following week we have inventory setup and inventory transaction processing for those that have inventory, actual inventory in the system. And then on August 3rd, foreign currency review. So going through foreign currency for those that have multiple currency setup, that's one for you. So as we don't have any questions, thank you for joining me today. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and week, and we hopefully we'll see you next week for generic inquiries and national.